So I recently went to this bowling alley with my family, and they had a few arcade cabinets there. Mostly modern games, but there was one particular cabinet that caught my eye. It was an old racing game called Battle Gear. It had a beautiful old school CRT screen, curved with big soft pixels and interlacing frames. Attesting to the cabinet's age was the burn-in. The game's loading screen was visible at all times. This was the first working CRT I'd seen in years, and I suddenly realised how much I missed them. Well, as much as I miss the way retro games look on CRTs, I really don't want to go out and buy one now and deal with all their problems. People want too much money for them, and besides, they're big, heavy, and power inefficient. Thankfully, we have shaders in RetroArch. Now my cheap 1080p monitor can make my childhood favourite PS1 games look the way they should, more or less. I'm considering getting a decent 4K monitor just to enjoy these shaders fully. I have an RX 5700 video card, and frankly, messing around with GPU intensive filters on a PS1 emulator is somehow more appealing to me than playing modern games. It bothers me when I see people using greatly increased internal resolution with PS1 emulators. Sure, some games benefit visually from the upgrade, but for me, nothing can beat these nostalgic CRT shaders. By the way, the preset I'm using is called PSX Composite, made by Cyberlab. Link in the description. Some of the best PS1 games have pre-rendered backgrounds. These games will never look better with only an increased internal resolution. I know there are mods for the Resident Evil games that have AI upscaled backgrounds, and these look really good. The people who make mods like this are absolute legends, but again, my brain wants Resident Evil to look more like this.
Stop it! Don't open that door!
This game is Jade Cocoon. It was the PS1's answer to Pokemon. It's not a great game really, but it has some really pretty pre-rendered backgrounds. I ripped some of these from the game's data and used AI to upscale the images. You can find that video on this channel. But again, just put dark scan lines between each rendered line and your brain fills in the missing detail. Crash Bandicoot is an entirely 3D game, so it mostly looks great in HD. But there is a very small issue which always bothered me. When you render this game at an increased resolution, the textures on these boxes don't line up right for some reason. Change back to the native resolution to fix this. Now the game looks awful until you apply CRT shaders. This is how I remember Crash Bandicoot looking when I was a kid, before we regrettably got rid of our old CRT for a new LCD. Siphon Filter 2. I guess the series was trying to mimic the success of Metal Gear Solid. At the very beginning of this first level, I'm going to land in this secret spot where you can take this overpowered gun. There's one thing about video games which I've always found eerie, and it's a commonality in all of them, and it's this timelessness. Take this instance. To progress in this game, I have to talk to my friend down there who is injured. But really, I can just stay up here for as long as I want. Games don't progress without the player's input. This level takes place at night, and If I keep the game on for 12 hours, it will still be night. The music will keep looping forever, and my injured friend will still be there, waiting for me to trigger the cutscene. It's like purgatory or something. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but like when I go back to these levels and it's the same every time, I don't know man, it's like it's eerie or something. Demo 1 was a series of discs that included playable demos and trailers. It took me a while, but I managed to find the exact ISO of the one that I had when I was a kid. Everyone remembers that tech demo that shows off this interactive T-Rex animation, but there was this other tech demo, and it was this manta ray animation. I always thought this one had this really unsettling, lonely feeling. This is enhanced by the fact that you can move the camera wherever you want, and if you keep moving away from the manta ray model, you discover that this ocean is just infinite empty space. Alien Trilogy, a mediocre yet almost good first-person shooter. This game is close to being good, but there's just some weird glaring problems, like how the whole game is way too dark. And the Queen Alien boss fights are an absolute pushover because she gets stunned by every single shot. I remember as a kid, the first time I saw one of these facehuggers, the way they cover the whole screen when they get you. They really tried to make this scary. Speaking of trying to be scary, Silent Hill is a game that succeeded. As much as I love the pre-rendered backgrounds in the Resident Evil games, Silent Hill's fully 3D areas feel so much more realistic. Maybe you think that looking at these old graphics these days and calling it realistic sounds silly, but I don't know man, to me this still feels like a real town full of lifelike detail. When I was little, I used to go for walks in my hometown on foggy days and I'd pretend that Silent Hill was happening for real. I even tried to draw a map of my town and mark where the roadblocks would be. Somehow this game captivated me like nothing else. Even Silent Hill 2 didn't really do it for me. My brother traded his copy of this game for Metal Gear Solid, if memory serves. A fair trade, but it meant that I spent most of my childhood with only this demo disc. And I played that demo over and over again. That's pretty much what we did back in the day. One of the most notable differences in this demo is that the school level uses the same music from the streets in the opening. I don't know why, but I find the use of this track makes this level feel so much creepier than it is in the final game. Another big difference is the combat. If you play the final game and then try this demo, you'll notice that Harry's attacks are slower. There's a long pause between each melee swing or handgun shot, and the handgun seems less accurate too. The slower combat makes the demo scarier than the final game. Mechanically, it sucks to play, but it does feel more realistic. There's this one weird, ineffective scare that wasn't included in the final game. Walk past this classroom and you hear the door open behind you. Turn around and a monster has spawned. The idea is these monsters can open doors, but it only happens in this one scripted moment, and it's kinda weird. This block on the stairs is only in the demo to restrict player access to the other floors. It used to bug me because Harry could easily step over this if he wanted to. When we finally got another copy of the full version of Silent Hill, I was disappointed to find that the PAL version in my region was censored. These grey children in the school level were replaced with these other monsters which don't look like kids. Another Silent Hill demo censored the gore by changing the colour of the blood to green. I find it really funny because all the blood and gore that's baked into the environmental textures at the beginning is unchanged. So the green dynamic blood really accomplishes nothing to make the demo more appropriate for younger players.
What is this? What's going on here?
This is Karushi. It's a puzzle game where you're trapped in this empty void. The demo version didn't have any music, so I found it highly unsettling. When I was little and I played this game on the Demo 1 disc, I used to pretend that this character was Harry Mason, the protagonist from Silent Hill. It used to scare me just a little bit how Harry can fall off this stage and he just keeps falling forever into the infinite black void. This game is called Pitfall 3D Beyond the Jungle. This is another game where I used to pretend the main character was Harry Mason. He looks vaguely similar and his name is actually Harry. I guess I had my own headcanon thing going on. In Beyond the Jungle you can input a cheat to play the original Atari game. And you can make Harry's little sprite have this baby head. I assume this is a developer's kid, and now this person is immortalized in this terrible forgotten PS1 game. Good for them, I suppose. This is the original Medal of Honor. When I was little, my older brother told me that if you shot the moon with a rocket launcher, it would explode. Of course, I tried and I couldn't get it to work. I figured I was doing it wrong until it occurred to me that my brother was just trolling me. There's one room in this game that I always stop to admire. Look at this area. Look at how this sky texture is clearly just a wall a few meters away, complete with a painted on moon like it's a kid's bedroom or something. A lot of old games are bad with scale, but I don't know how the developers thought this was good enough. It's so bizarre. Net Your Rose. This was a console that let you code your own PlayStation games, I guess. I had this collection of homebrew games on a demo disc. The ones I played the most were this one, where you have to rescue these ethnically diverse babies from Pac-Man ghosts. This maze game where you have to avoid zombies. And this spooky first-person shooter that looks like a Doom wad. This game is called Clone. I never knew the reason for that title when I was a kid, but I get it now. It's a Doom clone. There's only one enemy type and all the maps are flat mazes with the same textures everywhere. It's like a Backrooms game, years before the Backrooms became a thing. Well, that's more or less my PS1 nostalgia, brought back to life with CRT shaders.
This may sound really off the wall, but listen to me.
The world is changing at a disturbing rapid pace. I remember the first time I saw a PS2 game at a friend's house. It was Tekken Tag Tournament. The graphics were so good, it was like I was living in the future. I remember first learning what the internet was when I was like 10 years old. The technology blew my mind. And when we eventually got an Xbox and you could play Halo 2 against people from all over the world, I couldn't believe it. Young people won't remember this, but the internet used to be very different. I remember when you could Google a conspiracy theory and the top results didn't say debunked. I remember the world feeling safe when I was a little boy in the 90s. But then there was Columbine, 9/11 and global warming. Now I'm in my early 30s and we have the culture wars, internet censorship, creepy indoctrination in public schools, and I have this deep sense that I don't belong anymore. Like this isn't the same world I grew up in.
I haven't gone crazy and I'm not fooling around. At first, I thought I was losing my mind, but now I know I'm not.
Aging has brought me all these new problems like carpal tunnel, tinnitus, memory problems, and an inability to understand the newest memes. Maybe the world always was this scary, doomed place where everyone hates each other. But it sure is nice to go back to the 90s when, at the very least, I wasn't aware of all this. All I wanted to do was watch Goosebumps after school, and then explore the weird low-poly worlds of PS1 games. All this through the now ancient technology of CRT televisions. And with that horrendous, pretentious, and out-of-place closing monologue, I am off.
Yeah.